So good morning to those of us that have joined, and for those on the replay, hello. The picture looks nice and spring light is actually awful outside, so it's not a reflection of that, but more as we feel. So today's topic, we're going to have 20 minutes just discussion around it, and then any Q&A afterwards, and I'll be sending out the replay. So always keep your video on and just on mute, but no need to go into the chat. Just turn your microphone on and join in the conversation. So just a bit about what the program is that I have, which is the LIFT program, and termed so because of Learn, Investigate, Find, Transform, and all about helping you achieve your R&D ambitions in less time for less money. So today's topic, I picked the 3 schoolboy errors to avoid when investing in academic research and development. I didn't know if anyone had any guesses of what they might be. There's probably more than 3, but no. So the first one I picked is that people seem to think that they sit around and wait for one grant that is big enough in financial value that would cover everything they want. They put all their eggs in one basket and have their hopes pinned on it, and then have to sit quietly and just wait for sort of 6 months or so to find out if they got it or not. And that's tricky because that often doesn't happen. Well, most of the time doesn't happen. Also, you find that a lot of the bigger companies and things already have relationships with the research councils and the funding agencies, and are in there regularly advocating for their R&D needs because of the influence they have and the difference they could make to the bottom line. So I sort of think of it more as a jigsaw puzzle. And from that, there are multiple different grants over covering different TRL levels, and that also cover different timeframes. And also the fact that you as a company can pivot and adapt what you are doing to fit the grant, because ultimately, generally the technology is pretty transferable and you can just make it fit the need so that you get out that nugget of IP, and then you can start to build your jigsaw of IP up until your strategy to meet it. I put this in because there's quite a lot of people I meet who say, I looked at something and they're the best at it. Okay, have you spoken to them? No. How did you find out about them? So I had a quick trawl to see where people would look. And a lot of it, especially when people are looking to send their child to university, look at the Russell Group. The Russell Group are said so because they cover a whole range of topics. So if you're a university, I'll take Bath, for example, that doesn't have medical, however good you are in the other topics, you will never be in the Russell Group. So it's a chance as well to have a look at what you want to do and how your culture of your company is. For example, if you were a company that you need something taken to market, or you're looking to recruit good talent and maybe have apprenticeship or get people involved, actually you might want what we would have termed the old polytechnics, so the sort of 1980s newer universities, and they tend to work more locally as well and service the local community. Elsevier, oops, I think there's someone in the waiting room, let me just admit Paul. Elsevier look at the science of this and the publications, and I put down here the journals because a lot of them all want to be in Nature magazine and not Women's Weekly, and they use the tool science valuation to look themselves up. Hi Paul. To look themselves up as to how good that they are. Whoops. And then there's the QS World Rankings as well. So you'll see universities like NTU, Nanyang Tech University in Singapore, have rocketed up this over the last few years. And then also the research councils. So you could look at where all the money's going but that could be money to give you publications, not money to give you IP or to help you with a product. So it's being able to say, okay, I can look in a wide range of places to get a feel for these different universities. I think there's also an element of looking at who the vice chancellor is, because their personality tends to be one that will filter down throughout the organization. And if you are a very innovative and you want a very innovative university rather than a very academic studious one, that behavior at the top will give you a flavor of what's going to happen further on down. Because even if you met with an academic who is highly innovative, for them, they're probably stretched as far as they're going to go in that particular university, because the culture will bring them back and not enable them to do something else. I don't know if people looked at anywhere else for looking at universities and academics.
So I've spent the last 3 or 4 years interfacing with WASP, which is the Welsh Academic Space Partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes 6 of, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience of working with universities, but the 6 that I've been talking to in Wales are absolutely superb in their capabilities and their desire to perform cutting edge research. I mean, the University of Wrexham, Glyndŵr, do some fantastic optical work in the space arena. They're apparently on 85% of the satellites in orbit at the moment. They have space glass and space optics in place. Aberystwyth. Sorry, Aberystwyth.
Can I ask you, Paul?
Yes.
How do you keep the conversation going over 4 years? Right.
Oh, 4 years is a short period of time for university types. No,
but also for space and aerospace, you've got to think of the life cycle of the product that you're looking at as well, Errol. I think that has a lot
it's more to do with capability. You know, Glyndŵr have spent many years putting this together, and they have a number of years in the they act more like industrial suppliers, industrial support providers, rather than universities from a academic or research angle. I was just going to talk about Aberystwyth. Aberystwyth is massive in space data, so much that they've spun out their own commercial space data handling capability in Aber. Bangor is a smaller university, but they're huge in space chemistry. Cardiff have the Gas Turbine Research Centre, which is almost unheard of anywhere else in the UK. Swansea have propulsion and composites capabilities all over the board. You know, they are brilliant universities, and they're largely unsung. In fact, I noticed from the window in the middle of your slide there, Kate, that there isn't a Welsh university there.
No, because the bit you joined is that's the Russell Group.
Oh, okay.
So the reason,
well, I just thought it was prescient that it gave me a lead into speaking about Welsh universities at length.
Yeah, I put the Russell Group in because I know a lot of people, even when they're looking for their children going to university, or people who are starting out on a journey of academic research, will go, oh, I'll have to go to a Russell Group. But if they don't fulfill research or have faculties in every single of the domains it requires, and they could never enter. So I gave the example of Bath don't have medical, so they won't appear in here at all. And so people can dismiss it without really understanding the rules as to why they're there. They're predominantly classed as more research intensive universities rather than the sort of 1980s ones. But
so from our perspective, we plan to have quite a big presence in South Wales. And so we're very keen on getting partnerships and active relationships with, especially with Swansea and Cardiff, but you know, there's a number of others, and you know, we've spoken to Bristol and Southampton and Leicester as well. You know, what not angers me, but what frustrates me is that for some reason, the British universities can't seem to get together in toto and work together. We'd be brilliant, you know. We'd have you know, a world, and this is what brings Singapore so much benefit. I think that they can focus everything they do in Singapore through a single entity.
Yeah, there is the other one. There's NUS, National University of Singapore, who I think a lot of the staff have left NTU and started to go to NUS, and so NUS has been going up. But they, as a government, decided to be a knowledge capture nation. And so all of them then went for that culture at the top and what the requirement was, and they threw money in to bring knowledge into Singapore. I was going to touch on the fact you said Wales, that although we are the United Kingdom, the Welsh and the Scottish have money, separate money on top of, say, UKRI and things to put into specific topics. So Scotland have, whereas there are the catapults around the country, Scotland then have another sort of catapult-like system. Wales do a lot of funding, and Scotland actually, for no fees for students that are inhabitants of Wales. So it's free for them to go to university. And I think that pays dividends, but they tend to not protect their own, but the Welsh universities would come together as a team, and the Scottish universities would come together as a team and look out for each other and recommend each other, whereas I'm not convinced those in England do. But that is also a reflection on how they are measured. They're not measured to partner up and give work to somebody else. They are measured to bring in, as an academic, R&D money and make publications, not to make friends, not to raise patents, not to commercialize stuff. So it's that, being mindful of that when you're also choosing them. And the more 1980s universities, no, they're not classed as research intensive, so they wouldn't necessarily be looking for the Nature magazine publication and things, and you might find more collaboration in some way in that. But it's just having an understanding of their metrics and yours and the funding agency to know what your trade-offs are and how you could each win from it, each shine.
So if these universities, you say culturally they seem to be different to England?
No, not different, as in the Welsh government and the Scottish government, they bring together as a unit, I think, all the universities in Scotland, and the Welsh come across as all of Wales as the universities, and would collaborate or hand off to partner universities for having a slightly better technology than them or an understanding of a topic. That would be my perspective.
But at Rolls-Royce, the UTCs we have, well, are no longer there. One of the objectives is to bring the technologies into Rolls-Royce and then develop it as a product. Engineering is about doing things, but if the Scottish universities are of the view that, you know, we don't want IP, so the IP is then publicly owned, publicly available?
No, depending on where the funding has come from, because that sometimes has stipulations on it. The MOD put stipulations under one of the DEFCONs that they have to own anything developed during it. The research councils don't mind who owns the IP, but the universities get savvy and they start writing in contracts, we should have it all. And actually you can just push back and went, nice try. But Rolls own most of the IP that goes on in universities, but then the universities have a right to exploit.
Okay. I mean, looking at the American system, for example, I mean, they're normally funded by the DOE or by NASA or something like that.
That's more the American ones, yeah.
Yes, and that is interesting because when I left Rolls-Royce and I needed data, as the characteristics, components and stuff like that. Of course, but Rolls-Royce is proprietary. Rolls-Royce, nobody else can use it but them. But I was surprised at the amount of high quality information and data that is available from NASA and DOE in the public domain.
They do things in clubs. So they have like the goalie award, and there's a couple of other little clubs where you have maybe 4 to 6 universities in it with a couple people in industry.
So even from companies like GE and Pratt & Whitney, they get large amounts of money But all the work they do, it happened to Rolls-Royce too. There is a report on the NASA website, or the DOE website, I can't remember which one, which publishes data which I would have thought would be proprietary to Rolls-Royce.
Yeah. And so that's all about fulfilling the metrics. And so because they do things more in clubs in America, and not for the better good, but for sharing, you'll find a lot more published along those lines than you would do here.
That's the place of call for me, because the kind of data I want is normally held by engine companies who will normally not let that information be published for the public domain.
Yes, but you will also end up with some things will need an export license to get it over to you for security. So people
my
will
view is, if I get a report online and I can download it, well, I think that is public domain.
Yep, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So there'll be a certain amount of information that's public domain, and then a certain amount that you won't be able to get hold of unless you were an American citizen or something.
Yeah, but the shed loads on that culture is very different to any other country in Europe or any other part of the world.
Oh yeah, very different. And in I think in Germany, for example, the patents, if you do a patent with a university, the university has to file the patent first, and then they gift it to the company.
I think you'll have to work for Siemens, and I think the rule there was that if you were an employee who came up with a patent, by default you owned it, not the company.
Okay.
And they're going to persuade you with money or whatever to hand it over to the company.
There's a differentiation in universities between students and academics. I think if a student develops IP, it becomes theirs, and if it's the academic, it becomes the university's.
Okay, when I worked for Siemens, that was the rules that they had. I mean, they said by law it goes to the employee. He owns or she owns the IP, and it's for the university, the company now to work with the employee and come into some understanding. You know, I mean, it's not much good to the employee anyway, because these things cost an arm and a leg to patent, and then you've got to keep it going.
Yes, so it gets more expensive as time goes on.
Yes. This is one of the issues I think we kind of touched on the last time we met.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with these IP, you see? Now, I think I came across Northampton University, if I got that right or wrong.
Northampton, yeah, they'd be one of the newer ones.
Okay, they have an interesting concept. They suspended it during COVID, and I looked at it very carefully. And for a fee, I think £60 or something like that, they will do a search, and they will advise you as the suitability of it being patented. And if it is very highly, if they think it's got good potential, they will partner with you. And they'll take on the responsibilities and the cost, you know, of the IP filing and everything and keeping it going. Of course, they will want quite a significant part of the proceedings. So that's something I thought was interesting. I found in the UK, which I haven't found anywhere else. Nice.
I think there's a lot of latent patents. So people do it to protect a space so somebody else can't work there, or they patent something for particular use in a particular sector, but it could be transferred. So it's understanding maybe what's out there and how it could be transferred. So let me go on to the third one. I put this on, I quite like this little picture, but treating it as a transactional relationship, it's for forming a partnership and a proper collaboration, you need to be able to share. And it's a bit like, it reminds me of one of the fables of people walking past the pot, and the cauldron sort of pot is boiling on the stove, and everyone's to put vegetables in it as they go past so they can all have a stew, but they all come back at the end and there is just boiling hot water because nobody put anything in, and people are frightened of giving something away. So for this to work, twofold really. One is the thinking of that first slide I put up about the silver bullet. If people think there is only ever going to be one bit of research, then you will treat it as transactional. If you go into it with a longer term thinking and able to extend the trust first and have a more open relationship, you'll find that actually stuff will come more open back the other way. So Errol, we've probably got an example of this with Strathclyde actually, haven't we, for Enjoy the Air, of being very open about what we've done, but also being quite open and discussing on the IP terms. I think you're on mute, Errol.
Yeah, we just put it out there with them, didn't we? And I won't say we wore them down, but each conversation became easier, right?
We went through the pragmatics of it, of where they were going and what they wanted to do, and that having the IP that in one particular area as it came out, what were they going to do with it? But this is what we could do with it, but help market them at the same time. And it's put a nicer benchmark in of trust. And now we have a really open relationship and are looking at extra funding. And if they have ideas, they contact us. It's definitely not a transactional one. It certainly isn't a, we've come to the end of this, here's your report, right, off you go.
Yeah, correct.
And even